Okay, that's it. So now we want to read these values in our shader. Because here we're gonna pass the texture to the GPU, store it in the GPU. You're gonna have a variable for the texture on the shader, and then we're gonna sample from the texture variable. Okay. So let me start by creating an attribute, because that's what we just did. And I'm gonna call this attribute AUV. But note that our UV mappings, it's a vector 2, right? We only have 2 coordinates here because the texture coordinate space is 2-dimensional. So, but this is pretty much representing those 2 values we added per vertex. And because color, deciding color is a job of the fragment shader, I'm gonna have to pass this value to the fragment shader via a varying. So I'm gonna say A equals to U. I'm gonna call this V underscore UV. And I wanna just pass it, say V underscore UV equals to A underscore UV. Okay. And we're gonna need the same varying here in the fragment shader. Okay. And I mentioned before that we're gonna need to store in the GPU the texture that we want to sample colors from. So the shader language already has a type of variable for that. And this is a uniform. You're gonna assume this to be a uniform, and this is a uniform because whenever you load textures to the GPU, it stays in its memory. So there's a memory, there's specific memories for textures on the GPU. And if you access it as a uniform, basically it's gonna be the same for each vertex. The only thing that changes per vertex is the coordinate that you wanna sample from the texture, but the texture is global for everybody. And the type of this variable is called sampler 2D. This is, and I'm gonna call this use sampler, okay? But this is actually our texture. So we can say that this is the texture. And now we first of all, we don't need this V color anymore. Or wait, let's keep it here. Because essentially we're gonna read the textures, read the colors from the textures. But it might be useful if you wanna, let's say, imagine if you wanna have a base color and a texture color, maybe you wanna blend them. It might be interesting to have this. He's there yet already. Or keep this here, sorry. So, okay, so let's sample the color from the texture. And to do that, I'm gonna read now the color from the texture. And the code to do that is we're gonna read a color that has red, green, blue, and alpha in it. So I'm gonna call this variable text color, and it's a vector 4 because it has 4 channels. And to sample from a texture, you have this function called texture 2D. And here the first argument is the texture and the coordinate, which is VUV. And that's it. So basically, this line is getting this color 0, 0, the first pixel color here, and putting it as the first pixel on the triangle. And it's taking this color here and applying this color here. It's taking this middle color here and applying it here. And then all the intermediate pixels on this triangle are going to be sampled using the same line, but this variable here is going to be interpolated. So basically, if you put 0, 0, if you put 0, 0 here and 1, 0 here, automatically the vertex shader is going to get the middle here, and this is going to be 0.50. And all the other values are going to be interpolated for us, and for all of the triangle. And now that's it. We can just simply do this. Actually, we can say this. We are setting the pixel color to be the text color. We could do this in one line, right? We could do this. This could be simply one line like this. Okay. This is it for the shader, at least for now. So this is just mapping. We did the mapping ourselves already in the triangle. We created the variables that, and we wrote everything that we need for the shader to sample from the texture. Now we need to configure our buffer because we added a new pair of numbers in there. So we need to configure our vertex buffer to read those variables correctly. And that's seen here in our main function. We have, remember we have this kind of this three set of lines for each attribute variable in the shader. So here I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to copy these three lines. I'm going to say set up a UV attribute in the shader, and here we're going to have a UV. We're going to retrieve the AUV variable from the shader. This is also it's going to be called AUV. And then you're going to say, okay, now I want to configure and set the positions of this UV variable in my buffer. So this is here a UV. This is a vector 2, right? So this is 2. It's also float numbers. We don't want to normalize it. I think, yeah, we don't want to normalize it. And here, remember that we have this 6 here because each vertex had 6 elements, but now each vertex has 8 elements because we added 2. And the first, so RGB starts at 0. Oh, sorry, XYZ starts at 0. RGB starts at 3. And then we have 3, 4, 5. And this one here starts at 6. And just in these numbers, we can see them reflected here, right? First one starts at 0, or the XYZ starts at 0. The RGB starts at 3. And the UV starts at 6. And that's what I have here. And all of them, and each vertex has size 8 times the amount of like bytes per float. And so I updated this. Here is AUV, and here is a underscore UV as well. And I believe this is it for the buffers. That's the only thing we had to update. Any questions so far?